My life turned into a nightmare because of someone I loved, but I turned every pain into overcoming and victory. There are things we think only happen to others. I used to think so too. I thought my life was under control, that all I had to do was be honest, work ethically, and care for others to find peace. My name is Rosangela. I'm 34 years old, a doctor, and until recently, I was living one of the most peaceful periods of my life. I had a stable relationship with Caio, a supportive boyfriend, and my parents, Renato and Marlene, were my constant support. I had years of dedication, long shifts, studying, sacrifices, all to build a solid career and a stable life. I never imagined someone from my past would return to try to destroy everything I'd achieved. Rachel was my childhood friend. We grew up together, shared secrets, shared fears. She knew my family, my weaknesses, my insecurities. Her reconnection seemed harmless at first. Nostalgic messages, old memories, that how time flies conversation. I had no idea that behind that contact lay a dark intention. She slowly began to infiltrate me, gaining my trust again, until, without realizing it, I had opened doors she should never have walked through again. And by the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. The first sign was subtle, almost invisible. A nasty comment about me appeared on a review page for the hospital where I worked. At first, I ignored it. I thought it was some dissatisfied patient, the kind of thing that happens. But then another came, and another, until the comments began to mention details no one but Rachel could know. Personal things, childhood humiliations, intimate moments I'd never shared with colleagues. I felt like I was being stripped bare in front of everyone. The discomfort turned to fear when fake screenshots of conversations I had with patients began to circulate. I was called in by the hospital management. I had to explain, justify, prove I hadn't done anything. I saw doubt, distrust, and judgment in the eyes of some colleagues. I left the room trembling, wanting to scream. I, who had always valued ethics, was now seen as a fraud. And the worst part was not understanding who was behind it, or pretending not to, because deep down, a part of me already suspected. Over time, the attacks grew bolder. Fake profiles were created in my name, fake messages sent to patients, anonymous emails sent to the board. Everything was carefully planned. Rachel used old information to lend credibility to her lies. She claimed to have proof, claimed to know the real Rosangela. And the more I tried to defend myself, the more she dragged me down. I stopped sleeping well. I had nightmares about my name plastered across headlines. I was afraid to open my phone and see another notification, another lie. Caio tried to calm me down, but I could see the weariness in his eyes. He loved me, but he also suffered seeing how much this was destroying me. My parents tried to protect me, but their fear cut me down. My mother began accompanying me to the hospital. My father installed cameras in the house. And still, I felt insecure. It wasn't just my reputation that was at stake. It was my sanity. The final straw came when a video began circulating online. It was a grotesque montage, but well done enough to fool many. It showed me in an intimate situation with a patient. It destroyed me. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore. I spent 2 days locked in my room, without eating, without answering the phone. I just wanted to disappear. I felt dirty, humiliated, exposed. It was Caio who insisted I formally report it. I didn't want to. I was ashamed to expose myself further, afraid no one would believe me. But he didn't give up. He was the one who scheduled the appointment with the lawyer and who called Joseph, our tech-savvy friend. When Joseph analyzed the data and confirmed that everything was coming from accounts associated with Rachel, my world fell apart. It was real. It was her. And I didn't know what I had done to deserve so much hate. From that moment on, everything became a battle. The lawyer took the first legal action. I filed a police report, sought evidence, took screenshots, and provided testimony. Rachel always seemed one step ahead. She bypassed blocks, created new profiles, sent emails from different IP addresses. I began to live on high alert. Every noise made me jump. Every notification chilled my blood. Paranoia took over. I had panic. Attacks, started taking anti-anxiety medication again, and needed counseling. My parents took turns never leaving me alone. I, who had always been independent, was now afraid to even open the door. But amidst this chaos, something inside me began to change. I realized that either I fought back or she would get what she wanted, to destroy me completely. It was then, amidst tears and rage, that I decided I would no longer hide. The first hearing was torture. Rachel appeared calm, well-dressed, feigning serenity as if it were all some big misunderstanding. When she looked at me, my stomach churned. It was a cold, empty look, like someone who takes pleasure in seeing someone else crumble. She portrayed herself as a victim, saying I was stalking her, that I excluded her, that I was jealous of her. I wanted to scream, show the evidence, but my body trembled. The lawyer held my hand and said softly, "Stay calm. The truth doesn't need to rush." I took a deep breath and told her everything, in detail, while she stared at me with that mocking smile. I left exhausted, but determined. I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. I had lost too much to give up. In the car, Caio hugged me and told me he was proud of me. It was the first time in a long time that I felt a modicum of strength returning. Joseph dove into the technical side. He tracked IP addresses, cross-referenced posting times, and analyzed screenshots. It was almost like digital detective work. We spent entire nights trying to understand how she managed to keep so many accounts active. We discovered she was using servers outside the country and apps that masked her origin. It was an elaborate setup, the work of someone who had planned for months. Meanwhile, the lawyer filed for precautionary measures, trying to speed up the process. The slow pace of justice was agonizing. While we waited for decisions, Rachel continued to attack. One day, she sent flowers to the hospital with a note. "I still think about you." That made me tremble. It wasn't just revenge, it was an obsession. I started having nightmares. I would wake up sweating, hearing the sound of her voice in my head. I was afraid to leave the house, afraid of running into her somewhere. My parents were my anchor. My father, Renato, took on the role of protector. He installed alarms, reinforced doors, and created security routines. He tried to hide it, but I could see the concern in his eyes. My mother, Marlene, became my emotional shelter. She spent the nights with me when I couldn't sleep. She made tea, sat on the edge of my bed, and told me that nothing lasts forever. She was the one who convinced me to return to seeing some patients, little by little, so that fear wouldn't paralyze me. I was devastated, but also determined. Each therapy session helped me regain a little of my courage. I wanted my life back. I wanted the hospital to see me as I always had. I wanted to look in the mirror and recognize the woman I'd always been. Strong, capable, whole. One day, I received a message from a stranger. It was Emily, Rachel's younger sister. At first, I thought it was a trap, but she insisted. She said she wanted to help me. We arranged to meet at a discreet cafe, and I went with Caio and Joseph, just in case. Emily was young and scared. She said Rachel had always had obsessive behavior, that since adolescence, she'd fixated on people and then hated them when she couldn't control them. She said her family tried to help her, but she refused treatment. It was then that I understood the story was deeper than I'd imagined. Rachel didn't just want to punish me, she wanted to possess me, control my every move, and when she realized she couldn't, she decided to destroy me. I left that meeting trembling, but for the first time with a different feeling, that somehow I could win. With Emily's help, we obtained new evidence, emails, screenshots, even an audio recording in which Rachel admitted to creating fake accounts. It was a turning point. The lawyer included everything in the lawsuit, and things began to change. Rachel was subpoenaed again, and this time with more force. She lost control. She started sending direct messages to Caio, my parents, and colleagues at the hospital. With each attempt, more evidence accumulated. I learned to transform fear into strategy. I started writing everything down, recording every move. The suffering was still there, but I was no longer the same. I was tired of being the victim. The desire for justice became fuel. And even though the road was still long, I felt I was beginning to regain control over my own story. The following weeks were hell. Rachel seemed to go mad as the evidence against her piled up. She violated every court order as if nothing mattered. The courts ordered posts to be removed. She created new ones. Her accounts were blocked. She emerged with new identities. It was like fighting an invisible enemy that multiplied. On one of the most difficult days, I found Caio's car scratched, with the word liars written on the bodywork. I trembled from head to toe. It was proof that she was close, that she had crossed the virtual line. The police reinforced protective measures, but nothing could quell the fear of becoming a statistic. Sleep became a luxury. Every noise made me get up, I walked with my heart racing, my nerves on edge. That's when I realized the fight wasn't just legal, it was for my sanity, for my very identity. Therapy helped me understand something important. Rachel wanted me to fragment, to lose myself. She attacked my reputation, but her real target was my balance. When I realized this, I began to act differently. I began posting transparently on social media, sharing what I could about the process, calmly refuting the lies with evidence. At first, I was afraid of the exposure, but then I realized it was liberating. People began to support me. Patients sent loving messages. Colleagues apologized for doubting me. It was like recovering pieces of myself that she tried to steal. I still cried at night, still trembled when I saw my name on a website, but a new strength was emerging within me, a will to survive, not just resist. One day I got a call from Dr. Klein, the hospital director. He asked me to talk. I walked into his office with a sinking feeling, expecting another awkward conversation, but he surprised me. He said he'd been following the case, that he now knew who was behind the false accusations, and that the hospital was officially supporting me. I cried right there. It was like a ton of weight had been lifted off my shoulders. He introduced me to a lawyer specializing in cybercrime who joined the team already defending me. That's when everything started to fall into place. The new lawyer outlined detailed strategies, requested expert reports, and reinforced the blocking requests. For the first time, I felt like the system was truly working in my favor, and that feeling of finally not being alone was one of the most powerful I've ever experienced. But Rachel wouldn't back down. She began using other people. A man named Tyler appeared out of nowhere, pretending to be a journalist interested in telling the other side of the story. He said he wanted to hear my version. When I checked his information, we discovered he was someone connected to Rachel. He had participated in the montages, helped with the image manipulation. More proof. With each attempt she made, I became more alert. I no longer acted on impulse. The pain was still there, but I had learned to use it as a warning. Joseph always told me, "You're learning to think like her, and that's what will save you." I didn't want to be like her, but I learned that to defeat someone so manipulative, you had to understand the kind of mind you were dealing with. Over time, the hearings began to tire me less. I no longer cried at everyone. I prepared like someone going into surgery, knowing it would hurt, but knowing it was necessary. My lawyer said I was one of the most determined clients she'd ever had. That made me smile, even though I was tired. I knew my fight wasn't just mine. It was for all the people who suffer persecution and aren't taken seriously. One day the judge looked at Rachel and said, "Your behavior isn't love, it's destruction." That phrase echoed in my head. I left the courtroom with my heart racing, feeling that, for the first time, someone had named what I was experiencing. It wasn't drama, it wasn't exaggeration, it was violence, and I was finally winning. After that hearing, something inside me reorganized. Anger began to give way to clarity. I understood that the only way to defeat Rachel was to keep living, to keep being myself, even through the fear. I returned to the hospital full-time. At first, it was difficult to face the curious looks, the whispers in the hallways. But over time, respect returned. My patients began to seek me out again, some even apologizing for believing the lies. I was breathing more calmly. The weight on my chest still came in waves, but I knew how to cope. The therapy, the conversations with Kayo, Joseph's support, all of it sustained me. My parents also began to relax. My father hugged me more. My mother smiled with less worry. It was as if little by little the chaos was dissolving. There were still hearings, there was still tension, but now I could sleep without fear of waking up to another attack. Rachel was losing public control. People began to notice her destructive pattern. Some profiles that supported her disappeared. Others began to expose contradictions. Emily, her sister, found the courage to testify. She spoke about the obsessive behavior, the outbursts, the isolation Rachel imposed on her own family. It dismantled the victim image she tried to maintain. It was painful to watch, but also necessary. I no longer felt anger. I felt pity. Pity for someone who had lost so much that she lived only to hurt others. Even so, I knew she was still dangerous. People like that don't accept defeat. So I remained vigilant. I kept all the evidence, updated records, and pursued the legal plan with discipline. I had learned that justice is patience, not impulse. At the hospital, a new project began to emerge. Dr. Klein invited me to coordinate a mental health awareness campaign for professionals. At first, I hesitated. I still felt fragile, a little broken, but I accepted, and it was liberating. Talking about suffering, about limits, about rebuilding healed me in a way no audience could. I told part of my story, without naming names, but with truth. Other colleagues opened up as well. I discovered that many people suffer in silence, afraid of appearing weak. It was then that I realized the power of transforming pain into purpose. And, for the first time in a long time, I felt useful again. Not just as a doctor, but as a human being who survived her own downfall. Kaio was my rock the whole time. We had crises, of course. There were times when I thought he would give up on me, and he was also afraid I wouldn't be able to get out of that hole. But we stayed. Together. When it all started, I depended on him emotionally to get out of bed. Now, he saw me reacting on my own, and that changed our relationship. We started laughing again, making plans, going out without looking around. He said he saw me stronger, more alive, and I felt the same. The pain transformed me, hardened me in some ways, but it also made me more aware of what I want and what I will never allow again. I learned to say no, to protect myself, to identify people masquerading as friends. I learned above all that the love that saves isn't the one that blinds, it's the one that awakens. When the final court ruling finally came down, I trembled. Rachel was convicted of defamation, stalking, and violation of privacy. The judge ordered her to step aside, pay damages, and undergo mandatory counseling. There was no party, no celebration. I just sat on the couch and cried silently. I cried for everything I'd lost, for everything I'd endured, for everything I'd had to become to get there. My parents were with me. Kaio held my hand. Joseph opened a bottle of wine, but no one toasted. It was a silent victory, the kind only those who have almost given up understand the weight of. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt free. And freedom, in that moment, was everything. Even after Rachel's conviction, I realized that life doesn't automatically return to the way it was before. The memory of the attacks still came in flashes. A mean comment, a suspicious email, a bad dream. But I learned to cope. Every feeling of fear or anxiety became a reminder of how much I survived. I understood that no matter how planned and cruel someone's evil, there's a limit to what you'll accept, and the power of protecting yourself lies in recognizing that limit. I began establishing healthy routines, regular rest times, meditation, and exercise. I still feel the weight of the experience, but it no longer paralyzes me. I allow myself to feel, but I don't allow myself to be destroyed again. My career has blossomed again. My patients are back. The team respects me again, and I've even started giving lectures on ethics, mental health, and digital security to healthcare professionals. I don't talk about Rachel directly, but I tell my story of overcoming obstacles, how I survived persecution and rebuilt my life. It's incredible to see how what seemed like mere pain turns into learning and inspiration for others. People write to me thanking me, telling me they felt the courage to face similar situations. It's a feeling that combines relief and responsibility, showing that there is light even after so much darkness. My relationship with Kaio has matured. We've gone through times when our relationship was tested, but we've emerged stronger. I've learned to value the presence of those who truly care, to see the difference between love and unhealthy attachment. My conversations with my parents and Joseph have become even more sincere and closer. Trust in each other is slowly being rebuilt, but it's possible. Emily remains in touch, and her help has given me hope that not everyone connected to toxic people has to be lost. It's a reminder that even amid obsession and manipulation, there are life-saving choices. Today, when I think of Rachel, I don't feel anger, just a mixture of pity and caution. The pain exists. The scars remain, but they don't define who I am. I've learned to identify signs of toxic people, to trust my intuition more, to not allow invasion of privacy or psychological abuse. I've learned that strength isn't the absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. That the right support, from friends, family, professionals, is essential. That justice, patience, and strategy work better than impulse and revenge. And that rebuilding your life after destruction is possible, even if it takes time. If you're going through something similar, know this. You're not alone, and you don't need to lose yourself. It's painful, yes, And some nights you'll wake up thinking you can't do it. But every small step, every record, every cry for help is a brick in the reconstruction of your life. Victory isn't crushing those who hurt you. It's freeing yourself, protecting yourself, and rising again. Today, I look in the mirror and see a woman who cried, suffered, almost gave up, but who got up and returned to living with dignity, courage, and self-love. And that's what I hope to convey with my story, that even amidst chaos, there is a path of light, strength, and resilience.